It's a classic computing interview session.
One in black, or I had to pick. It was actually quite a challenge. I don't know how well you can see, and this is kind of an extreme example. I've got a plus sitting up on top of the record player,
Yeah, I can see it
and
pretty good.
it is like abusively yellow, like
Uh,
somebody chain smoked cigarettes in front of it. So I remember standing at Home Depot and just kind of driving myself crazy of, do you get what I ended up being was like almost factory beige, off by a couple whatever color increments there are. But when you look at it compared to anything, the Apple II or the Macintosh Plus, they look so jarringly like unfamiliar, and it's like, no, that's what it's supposed to look like.
yeah.
They're just several decades old, and now they're yellow. But you had to pick.
You know, it'd be cool too is a Mac Plus Platinum, Lisa.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There you go.
That'd be cool, right? All right.
I would love that. Yeah.
Remember, we were going to keep the interview at 20 minutes. What happened?
Oh, whoops. Sorry.
Okay. Who cares? All right. Because I don't want to skip any questions here. You ended up putting this is going to be really interesting to hear about. And again, you explain it. And I'm not saying you didn't explain it well, but I think it's better it'll probably be better you explaining it. But so the Lisa has a 12-inch display. So it's a 12-inch cutout. And but you actually ended up using a 15-inch panel. And then you thought about just like, I guess, bezeling it off, or I don't remember exactly, but you ended up where you're using like I guess you wrote a little Raspberry Pi, or go ahead. How did you
Yeah, yeah.
solve that?
No, you got it spot on. So I printed it, and I at the same time I printed the Macintosh, and that's relevant because I said, okay, here they are. They're ready. They're clicked together. They're painted. They're beautiful. Like part two, I have to put the innards in there, and I have a million Raspberry Pis just laying around. I'm a big Raspberry Pi guy. And I thought, okay, so that part of the hardware is done, and I hooked up to a tiny screen. I got the software kind of rocking and rolling. I thought, okay, let's get on Amazon and buy a screen. And I had kind of taken the measurements for, and there's multiple measurements. I wish I had my paper here anymore. You've got your kind of visible screen area, and then there's like a kind of a chassis area behind it, and then there's the entire inner area where something can go, any hardware can go. And I'm specifically talking about the screen butting up against like what would be the bezel. And there's not a lot of room in that case. I can't remember what it is. There's like uh, an inch and a quarter at the top, and then maybe 2 inches at the bottom, and whatever. The specifics don't necessarily matter, but I was shocked that I could not find any sort of custom screen that just kind of vaguely fit that. I knew it wasn't going to fit exactly, but I thought, okay, if I could get an inch overhang, that's awesome. And just surprisingly, the screen sizes, I guess unsurprisingly, screen sizes are really standardized now. You can get this size screen, this size screen, or this size screen. Even in the hobbyist stuff, you get on Alibaba or whatever, where it's going to come for it to take you 3 weeks or 3 months to get it. They've got pretty predefined screen sizes, and you can't really deviate from that. And I was
Is
really
15
annoyed.
like the smallest now?
Well, if you get on Amazon and try to do your same day, next day, a
Yeah.
portable display is the only size you can probably get is about 15 inches. And if you're lucky, you can find a slightly smaller one or whatever. But anything smaller doesn't fit at all. And also, screen sizes we all know this, are really deceiving. Where a 15-inch screen is kind of a diagonal, and different screens can have different, barely different heights and widths, and it makes it very difficult to pinpoint, okay, I need a screen that does this and this. So what I did was
He says really a 4 by 3 standard.
yes, right, which in modern times you can't really find. There's not a lot of 4 by 3 portable monitors.
Apple's hoarding them for the iPads.
Yeah, right. Well, and it's funny you mentioned that. I'll touch on that in a second. So I randomly, this gal calls us for our office and says, "Hey, we have a bunch of office furniture. Do you want to come get it?" We said, "Okay, sure." So we went over there and got a bunch of cool standing desks, whatever. And she had a box of computer stuff. And I said, "Hey, what are you doing with this?" She said, "Well, we're going to send this off to be destroyed. It's our company stuff." I was like, "Well, hey, if I promise to like nuke your hard drives, can I have these?" And she's like, "Yeah, yeah, take them." So in that box were a couple of Surface Book 2s, which is an old laptop by Microsoft. It's not like the Surface they have now with like the cloth keyboard, the flimsy. It has the like aggressive hinge, and it's the coolest computer format of all time, and I'll die on that hill. I'm a Mac guy, I'm a Linux guy. I don't use Windows, but I'll die on that hill that the Book 2 is the
Well, and it
coolest.
had it had like a limited version of Windows too, I think. Like
No, the
not
earlier Surface,
CE or whatever. Oh, go ahead.
they
That's
ran
something.
RT, which was the ARM version, and I could talk about Windows ARM versus Mac ARM all day, but No, these were Intel. They had little GPUs in their dock, but I wish you could pull one over. Anyway, they're very cool computers. They're outdated now, but you can detach the tablet from the keyboard. And I had this sitting here, and I just like walked over to my couch and just like threw it inside the computer and plugged it in. And I was like, oh wow, this fits. Obviously, it extends way beyond the screen, but this fits. Holy cow! Like, what have I been missing? Like, there's just devices out here that'll fit. And so I remeasured, and what actually you would know this is the inside of this has a little tray for what should hold like some sort of SD card holder, and then another tray up here, and there's just all these flaps inside the device. And my original measurements had respected those flaps, and I realized, wait, I'm not going to put floppies in this computer, unfortunately, because you can't. They don't make a 5.25 inch floppy USB drive. Only the three and a quarter, 5.5, whatever. I'm messing them up. Doesn't matter. So I went there with a Dremel and cut all that stuff out. And I said, oh my gosh, now I have all this area to put a screen. And now tons of portable displays would fit. So I buzzed out to Micro Center. I took a piece of cardboard, I think, and like carved it out perfectly. And I went into Micro Center and I said, I need a monitor that's this big or smaller. And we went and opened a couple boxes, and we found one, and it was $100 or whatever. So toss that in there. You can see it in the article. I 3D printed these little brackets and glued them to hold it up and into place. And then to what you were asking about, the Raspberry Pi is running Raspbian, which is their version of Debian, and it's just Linux, whatever. And I thought this was going to be really easy. It ended up being a challenge. I thought Linux would have a really graceful way for me to say, okay, here's my monitor. The system understands my monitor size, but within my monitor frame, I want my display visibility to be, we call it overscan on old TVs and stuff, where you go, or like when you're setting up your PlayStation or something, you pick where your screen is. And Linux there just wasn't a tool that did that. If there was, I didn't find it. And so I ended up having to just write a crude little program. And at first I tried to make it system level. So it would just take my Linux operating system, the display, and go shrink it down, whatever. And that did work, but it introduced a bunch of weird input lag because it's like reinterpreting things over and over. It was messed up. So what I ended up doing was building a little program that would just like act as an intermediate layer between any program I ran. So if I were to kill this software right now, you'd see the Raspbian desktop, and it's like way off the side, like all my icons, my menu bar, whatever. It's only when I open my little chooser, which we'll talk about in a second, I imagine, and then launch a program that it intercepts from that, like I forget what that program's called, like MacBezel or something, that it takes that program launch and like Lisa EM or the I forget what my emulator for the Mac software is.
Oh yeah, I can't. It's on the tip of my tongue, but go ahead.
Yeah, but it provides the guidelines, and it says, hey,
Mini VMac.
Mini VMac, that's right. Yeah. It opens Mini VMac, and it says, hey, Mini VMac, you are going to open exactly like this right here. And the rest of the screen's black. It's not running in window mode. You'd be able to see it off to the right side. Actually, there's a piece of felt there, but so it kind of dictates what that software can do and where it can occupy. So it opens the same spot every time, and it works pretty good.
Yeah. So talk about your custom startup menu, and so before you go into it, I think. So actually, you have two of them. Is that right? So you have one in Mini VMac, and then you have one for Lisa M. Or you can elaborate now or explain.
Yeah. So what happens when we boot it, and maybe after I explain this, I'll go back there and grab the keyboard and do it. When you boot it up, it opens into the chooser, and it's just a crude application chooser. It says, hey, which of these three applications do you want to run? And then I applied a vintage Mac aesthetic to it, so it's just a little more on brand. And it asks if you want to open what it's effectively asking, and it does it in a more user-friendly way. So do you want to open Mini VMac in Mac version, what is it, 4, I think, or Mac version 7.5, which is what it's booted into right now, or the Lisa operating system. And it's just routing. So the first two options open Mini VMac in those different versions, and the third one opens Lisa EM with those guidelines. Yeah, I grew up kind of tinkering around, hacking and slash, and I started making like browser-based video games a long time ago. I'd make these browser-based multiplayer Mafia games, and it was before Facebook did all the Mafia War stuff. It was a way cooler game than that, and it has a near and dear spot in my heart. Those games, and I learned PHP and SQL from that, and then just kind of learned things as I needed them as I progressed.
Yeah, I never really learned any programming. I did a little HyperCard, if that
Yeah,
impresses
yeah.
you.
But that's good. No, that's it's nice to have a foundation.
So
And now
it's funny.
I don't know.
I got started. The first article I ever wrote about the history of the graphical user interface, I did it as a HyperCard stack from a Mac user group, and then that became that article later on, and then it all evolved from there.
That's cool. I love that. No, and I don't do a lot of it now. I pay people who are much smarter than me to help out with all my projects because I know just enough to be dangerous. And in the context of this, like no harm, no foul. If I write something janky, that's fine. But it works pretty well actually.
So when you switch it on or off, is that all, one button automatic everything, or
So yes, kind of. And I'm answering a question you didn't ask. When I do this again, I want everything to be mounted properly. I want to do a hardware switch. I was catching myself going down this rabbit hole of like delaying. So I was like, oh, I want there to be a hardware switch on the back, a big clunky click click. But I was like, oh, I want it to be like period specific. Oh, I want it to be maybe I could just get the one that was on the Lisa, the power button. I was like, wait a minute, what am I doing? I'm going to make this an infinite, you know, the project that'll never get finished. So yes, right now you have to go to the Raspberry Pi and tap the little button on it, but it'll boot right up. It boots right into the launcher, whichever operating system you pick. It has audio in it, so you hear like like right now you would have heard the Macintosh boot beep, and that's kind of fun. People get a kick out of that.
so like, I'm looking at it. I mean, I can clearly see it. Of course, some distance here, right, through the video. Obviously, you don't have the connection for the real Lisa keyboard. You don't have a real Lisa keyboard. You don't have a
Right,
real Lisa mouse. It's wireless. You don't have the power button on the front. You don't have the little light.
right,
You don't have the disk drives or the. So sure, we could start picking at it and say there's all this stuff that isn't 100% accurate. But like Alex's thing, the FPGA, it's not physically accurate at whatsoever, but
right.
it'll give you the accuracy of using a Lisa. And so you can kind of set that part of it aside and now experience a Lisa. So to
Right.
me, this is just a, well, not necessarily plussed up on that because this is not the real hardware sort of is an emulation.
Right.
But where I'm going with it, I guess, is that anything you improve about it now, or just plussing it, it's
Yeah.
still you're sitting in front of, for all practical purposes, a real Lisa experience, and you're
Yeah.
you're experiencing that way. So even if it's not 100% accurate, I think it's a big win. It's cool.
Yeah, and I struggled with that a little bit because I made a bunch of concessions. So one example,
Oh yeah, talk
right
about
here,
the
this is the
mouse.
mouse I ended up using. This
Now you
is
bought wait, you bought a Microsoft mouse,
yeah,
right? And then you put it inside this Lisa. You 3D printed the Amiga case. Is
yeah, so
that
the
right?
Amiga case. So it is really this Franken-Lisa. It was I have a couple of the like the original Macintosh mice, and apparently the Macintosh mouse and the Lisa mouse are the same innards or and
Yeah.
they're just different chassis or
Well, and
something.
you can obviously use the plug looks different on the Lisa one, but the plug is actually the same, and the Lisa one
Uh,
mouse is different from the Mac mouse. But once
yeah.
they rebranded it the Macintosh XL, they all came with the Mac mouse.
Right, right. And I wonder if I have it, I can grab it really quick.
But
So
like if you buy an old Lisa and you don't have a mouse, you can use a excuse me a real Mac mouse.
yeah, and my
Oh, you 3D
understanding
printed a oh yeah,
this is
because
the
someone out there has a 3D thing like where you can put that over the Mac mouse, right?
that's the idea, and that's what they say is you pull this out, and apparently and I might be wrong. Don't crucify me if I'm wrong, but I believe that the guts of it
We'll let
are
the crowd
virtually the same.
choose.
Yeah, I think the guts are virtually identical. It's just the chassis. So they say you can actually swap them between the two.
Yeah,
Um,
well, of course you'd have to because the button's different, so you'd have to.
right.
Yeah, there's got to be a little bit more to it, but yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, but I
I want
realized
one.
yeah, yeah. I thought, okay, I can 3D print this, and I'm not a 3D modeler, and that's kind of part of the problem was that somebody smarter than me could take that Logitech mouse that somebody built the Amiga thing for, and this other retro case for, or whatever,
Yeah,
and they could have fit it in here, but I couldn't, and I wasn't going to fuss with it and put this project out, much longer. There's nothing stopping me from doing it now, spending a weekend doing it, I suppose. But same with the keyboard. I ended up just buying like a vintage looking mechanical keyboard on Amazon, and then like I did with this mouse, I got spray paint, spray painted, so they all look identical. Um,
Yeah, I like the keyboard a lot. I'm looking at it on Amazon, and actually, I want to buy me one because I
It's
just
not.
really
It's a
like it. It does really have that. It's not exact, but there's the just the overall look of it. Just is
yeah.
really captures it. Now, since you chose this one, have you encountered any other one? You go, oh, I should have got that one, or next time I'll buy this one, or do you feel like this is still the best compromise one or whatever, a new one?
No, what I really like to do, and it'll require. I figured out how to do it. I wish I had it sitting in front of me. I have 3D printed the like what is it, the M0110 something. That might be the mouse. I don't know if that's the keyboard, but like the original Macintosh keyboard. And then there's the version. It might be the A or the one or something that has the number pad. Um, I found a 3D model for that, and I printed it. And there's a plate that goes inside of it, so you can theoretically buy any small 60% mechanical keyboard online and slot it in that case and kind of convert that into a, just by visuals alone, the guts are total Franken whatever, but the case on the outside of it would be a Macintosh or a Lisa case. So I'd like to do that next, and I'd like to do what I just described, where I find a way to put that Logitech mouse inside of here and just make it a little more true to it. But at some point I have to decide, I have to, admit to myself, okay, I can infinitely chase this like true Lisa purity, but like at the end of the day, like it's nothing, there's nothing pure about it. So I'd like to get as close as I can get like that. One thing I thought about doing, because of the nature of this, and the way my work has changed, I'm doing a lot more just like in my life, just more communicating, you just emailing, and this is what I would like, whatever, instead of me opening my graphic design program or whatever. What I'm getting at is I thought it might be funny you can't see I have a 49-inch monitor on my desk and a MacBook,
Oh,
whatever, to put that on my desk and just like wire that external display into
oh
like
yeah, yeah, that'd be
something
cool.
else, and just like, I think people would get a kick out of coming to my office and like, oh, let me look that up on the computer for you, and it's visually like a Lisa, like, hang on.
Yeah, and
I was like,
have
that
it
might
where
be
you
fun.
could actually use it, but you can switch it over to the Pi or whatever else when you want
Yeah,
to.
yeah.
Yeah, that'd be really cool.
It's just an external display in there. The Macintosh, when I finish that might go home on my bookshelf, and it might play some like, 8-bit looking screensaver or something. It's something.
This is not 3D printed, but along the same lines, this is, a lot of people have been buying these things lately.
Yeah,
Yeah, where you get the little Mac clock.
yeah. Those are
So,
so
just
fun.
made me think of that. I haven't done a whole lot with it than put back, turn it on. But
I I saw a guy
oh,
online today who he's in one of the subreddits for like vintage computing. He had like jokingly put his, what was it? It was an Apple IIc or something that was different, on like his bedside table, and he was like, "This is my clock for the month, whatever vintage whatever month," and it was just silly but
yeah.
something like that would be funny to put in my bedroom as like my alarm clock, my little smart home center or whatever.
Back in the day, my favorite little thing on, my first Mac was a Lisa that I
Yep.
bought from Sun Remarketing. And so for all practical purposes, a Mac Plus, it ran System 6. And so, especially when I first got it, I would leave it on all the time and I'd go to bed
Yeah.
and listen to it humming over in the corner. And then I had the Pyro screensaver. Dude, you're familiar with that one?
No, huh?
All right, so look it up, Macintosh repository and that. So it was a simple screensaver called Pyro. And so basically, a screensaver after 5 minutes, whatever you set it to, it goes black. And then now, this it would very slowly populate, but it would populate like the stars. And then every like, I don't know, 10 seconds, 15 seconds, like a little firework would shoot off and it go, phew, and just
Huh.
and it was just this very nice, relaxing little star
Oh,
field on mostly black screen. And my Lisa later, my Mac or whatever's humming off in the distance,
yeah.
and there's just something so peaceful and nice about that. So that would be cool, and put on the old
Yeah.
Mac. But it was very popular. And then after Pyro, we got a little bit more sophisticated with I'm going blank now, but the flying toasters and that whole
Yeah.
and
Oh,
the
yeah,
Star
absolutely.
Trek.
Yeah. That's
So
so fun. One thing that was, you just remind me of this. One thing that's so interesting about this, and is I wheel it out in our office, and I just let people play with it. And what it actually runs is there's these like alias drives on there that have like every, I say that with air quotes, every piece of software and every game. I'm sure it's missing a bunch, but what's been so fun is to wheel it out there and let people go, I wonder if it has blank. Usually I do it with games. And what's so fun is, one, how they light up and how excited they are to show their little game. but it's also interesting. Just a sign of the times that it was, I guess, is that everybody has a different answer, and everybody pulls out the most strange, obscure games that you've never heard of. It's not Oregon Trail, they're not opening, AppleWorks or whatever it is. They're opening this weird choose your own adventure game that no one's ever heard of because it was the only game that their computer store sold, or their friend was just like, yeah, here's a copy, whatever. So it's fun to like relive that nostalgia with them.
So you have an original Mac, you have a couple Apple II. What else do you have? What other vintage computers do you own?
Oh man. So one thing that I regret is I'm big on purging. I'm big on like I don't need this. There was that girl that got real popular on Netflix with the show that said
Mhm.
if you haven't touched this in so long, get rid of it. If it doesn't bring you joy, get rid of it. These things brought me joy, but
It's a pretty good strategy. I mean, a pretty good thing
it
overall.
is. But it's unfortunate when you apply it to like vintage stuff that's harder to replace.
Yeah.
I've done it like I got rid of a Wurlitzer electric piano that I could go buy another one, but I want my Wurlitzer back and things like that. But so I say that to say that I've gotten rid of 5 times as many things as I have right now, and I've just really recently started to like reacquire. So I got the plus on Marketplace, and I got an amazing deal on like a Macintosh 128K with keyboard and a mouse and the bag, then an image writer. Came with a bunch of floppies, so I snatched that up. I got it for $500, the whole bundle. Snatched it up, really love that. Um, and that's kind of what started getting me into the Lisa. Was I was just studying, I was reading these books. The 50-year Macintosh or 50 years of Apple book came out, last month or whatever. That's a fun book if you haven't read it.
hmm David
It's
Pogue.
awesome. What's that?
By David Pogue.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's really fun. It's really good. It goes into stuff that other people don't go into.
So,
Um,
I'm old enough now where I used to read his column, I think it was Mac User. I think it was a Mac User versus Mac World, but I got him
how
every
funny.
month.
Yeah.
But I have
Um,
some wisdom to pass down on that, I think.
yeah.
First a kind of a joke. You ready? So what's the difference between a hoarder and a collector?
What's that?
Space.
Yeah.
But
Well,
and there's some truth to that. But in reality, I think where the truth is that hoarders are ashamed of their hoard. Collectors are proud of their collections. They want to show it to you, right?
yeah, yeah,
But there's good wisdom in, I had to purge a lot of stuff where, I had a whole garage full. It's like it's sitting in the garage it's just getting dusty, and I'm barely, I like it and I value it, but I don't have time. I can't do anything, and so it's got to be better off in somebody else's hands or in another environment or whatever. But but I think my wife understands me better, that this is how I conveyed this to her. And hold on. A little more, one last show and tell on my thing is because I reacquired some things, which this is not my original, but I had this toy when I was 5 years old. And, and I'm really doing my best to try to put some of these things keepers. This is something I want to keep. And
yeah,
it's reasonably valuable. Last time I checked, I don't know, $300-400.
yeah.
It's a nice little collectible, and I got them for a better deal than that maybe a decade ago. But where I was going with this is that I've explained that, like, 'cause she didn't quite understand. It's like, well, why do you want all this stuff all around you? And I go, well, think of it as this is my art.
Yeah.
These are my decorations,
Yeah.
and they make me happy. But that's the thing. Even though I'm not pulling him out and putting batteries in him and playing with him, but the fact that I can even, he's literally on display, and every so often I can look over, and kind of smile about it.
Yeah.
That's how I kind of try to look at it.
Yeah. I mean,
I
life
reacquired
is,
I reacquired some of my favorite old toys, and so that's another
yeah.
collectible thing.
Yeah. Life is too short to not do what makes you happy. You don't have to explain it to anybody. Just do it. Do what makes you happy.
Yeah, and as
So,
long as it's not imposing on your life, that's where
right.
hoarding comes in. It's like
Right.
imposing, or your loved ones, or you share your partner or whatever. So
Right. Right. So I've been trying to kind of reacquire. So I got the Macintosh 128K, and I thought I want a Lisa. Obviously, I want a Lisa. Oh, I was going to mention one more thing. If you haven't read it or aren't aware, you probably have, and you probably are. I mean, that to everybody. Um, that I wish I knew the name of it. The name of it, Steve Jobs in Exile.
Oh yeah,
A
that
book.
just came out. I've been following
Yeah,
fairly
it's
young guy
awesome.
too. I think maybe your age, that wrote that. I think, yeah,
Interesting. It's
on
a really great
LinkedIn.
book. It's super good because if you go read the Steve Jobs books and the Apple books, they all kind of gloss over Pixar and Next, and this really dives into it and provides a lot of interesting context about like that shift back into Apple and the acquisition, where a lot of the books I think didn't do it correctly, didn't do it justice. When like it's much more nuanced, there was much more back and forth and positives and negatives, and all the books make Gil Amelio out to sound like a kind of a dork, and
Yeah,
he
yeah, they've been unfair. I think well, I could talk your head off about. I think it was kind of unfair with Gil Amelio, but especially John Scully's gotten a really bad rap,
yeah, yeah,
unfairly so. And
yeah. It provides a lot more nuance to some of those conversations, and the context that you don't get because we weren't there. But that was just my little aside. So to answer your question, I looked online for a Lisa, and the cheapest Lisa you can buy, if you can even find one right now, which you might not be able to on eBay. I don't think there are any right now. They're $4,000, $5,000, or there's the
mhm.
guy that's selling the ones, nice guy
Oh,
that
like
were in
80,000
Pirates
or
of
something.
Silicon. He was selling the ones from Pirates in Silicon
Oh
Valley.
yeah, 100 grand for two of them.
Yeah. So I was like, I'm not going to get a Lisa anytime soon, and unless I get really lucky. So I've just kind of started mass acquiring anything I can find. Maybe I can send you a picture of it and you can toss it on the screen or something. But I found this fella who it's where I got the Apple II Pluses from yesterday,
Hmm.
who cleans out storage units, and he has a huge building just filled with junk. He doesn't art, he doesn't catalog anything. He said, "Go for it, go look through it." So I got four Tandys, like the CoCo twos and one of the CoCo threes.
Oh
Um,
wow.
yeah, I got a Bonnie Blue iMac. I got a couple like compact vintage computers. I got some actual Amiga stuff.
Wow.
A million things I'm forgetting right now. Some Apple displays. Um, but I'm just acquiring anything and everything I
It's
possibly
crazy how
can.
that can still happen.
Oh yeah, yeah. But it's so much so that I've like got all the preliminary stuff done to open like a recycling center here. I live in downtown Kansas City, just for the sole purpose of getting people to like bring me this old dang computer from the basement, and it's a Lisa or something, but so to save it from the landfill. But I'm just acquiring things. I'm looking for an original iPod now, and I grabbed an original iPhone the other day, and it's like you said, it's stuff that I can throw either on my shelf at home, or we have some glass display cases around the office, and it's affirming for me because I love it and I geek out when I walk by it. But I'll see people. We have a lot of older folks here too, in their 50s, 60s, 70s, whatever, and they will walk by that case and they'll just be enamored, and they'll go, "Oh
Yeah,
my gosh!" And it's fun because we can kind of share that.
right. They enjoy it. It's
Yeah. What I'm doing right now is I'm building an operating system. And you see a bunch of people try it, and there's like interesting historical tales, like Terry Davis, who built his like religious folk, what Temple OS. It's a kind of a horrifying rabbit hole, but a really interesting one. If you're bored, go look into it. But I'm not trying to do that. I don't want to build a 3D color, whatever operating system. And I'm in this lucky position where I have kind of a vague memory of how to navigate DOS in my mind. And I'm kind of relearning DOS, but learning for the first time both like the Apple DOS stuff and the IBM, Microsoft, whatever. And it's interesting because what the Lisa playing with the Lisa operating system is really, really interesting, especially if you're playing with it for the first time after having grown up on like modern operating systems. Because candidly, and I'll probably get crucified for saying this right now, but I think most people would agree. The Lisa operating system is like really unpleasant to use. It's really cool from a historical perspective, but like the fun is, I think, for me, is mostly having like the Mac operating system. That's where it's a little more polished, a little more usable. That's where all this big software is for, whatever. But that don't let me downplay how important the Lisa operating system was, and how intuitive and unintuitive a lot of the operations are. Ripping off a piece of paper and your desk widgets or whatever they're called, whatever. Um, so the reason I mention all that is because I'm kind of building this operating system. I'm calling it Tetra, and it will run on bare metal, on like an ESP32 or whatever. But it's really interesting to be able to start it like at zero. And I look back at a lot of like DOS commands as being really unintuitive. It's really unfriendly. You only are able to navigate old DOS because it's been drilled into your head, because somebody's explained it to you. But it still doesn't make a lot of
you
sense.
kept the guide next to you at the time,
Yeah,
until
yeah,
you
and you're
learn the basics.
right. You're just recalling memory. Just, oh, I know that I do this way because it's what I've been taught. And it's interesting to be able to go back. knowing everything we know now about just how our brains work and how we like to use computers and build a command line operating system with all of that in mind. So it's been fun to like work on this Tetra operating system. It'll all be open source out there available. Anyone can do it. But like, same with the hardware. Like I'm designing my own like chassis that's a little reminiscent of the Apple II, but it has a screen built into it. And it'll be something people can print and have all the parts and whatever. But I don't know. I got a lot to talk about. I'd love to
Keep
talk
at it.
about.
That's what we do in this hobby, right?
Yeah.
And
I'm all about it.
it's like just multiplying people doing what you're doing, and well, in different ways. Just plussing
Yeah.
up all the stuff. Um, yeah, to your comment about the Lisa, because the Lisa was it wasn't it was very innovative and it was intuitive for where it was. But
Yeah.
yes, the Mac simplified everything, which also limited it in a lot of ways. And then it had to re-evolve to the point of some of the advancements the Lisa already had. But that's what made it more approachable from day one.
Yes.
The Lisa did pioneer the one button mouse, which made a big difference. But then the Mac simplified it even more with the menuing system and just
Yeah.
sort of standardizing looks and feels and all that stuff. And oh, the other thing I was going to say is if you go to, I guess I'll put it in the show notes. Yeah, I just saw this the other day. This article at Hackaday is from the 13th, that's 6 days ago. But there's something called Gentle OS, a simple OS for your old PC. I don't know how you've seen that. It's interesting though.
Interesting.
Check it out. Somebody came up with a really simple alternative sort of graphical user interface for really old PCs. So that's
Yeah.
fun.
So like I think we'll see a second live for a lot of this hardware. Somebody could theoretically open up Claude or ChatGPT or whatever the coding components and say, hey, I want you to deeply study, the actual hardware of this Lisa or this Macintosh or whatever, and I want you to build an operating system from the ground up that better takes advantage of it and has modern
That's,
this and that.
yeah, I agree with you. That's interesting. I hadn't really thought of it in those terms. I personally was part of the desktop publishing revolution, which the Mac
Yeah.
helped make possible. And then later on, of course, we got the desktop media, which we're still in. I just heard a stat the other day. More people watch YouTube. It's nothing new. But then, what do you call it? The old stuff, television or whatever. Yeah,
Yeah.
YouTube is modern television now. So
Yeah.
that's the desktop media revolution. And that's interesting. You're right. I think there's going to be a desktop software revolution.
But I think what we'll see is, people will be able to use these tools to, and some people do it by hand. If you're in the Mac groups on Facebook, somebody today was like, hey, I hand wrote this MIDI playback software, for the vintage Macintosh. I thought, oh, how cool. But we'll see like a bunch of people get into this hobby, it'll remove the barrier of entry. So we'll have a bunch of like AI assisted software written for it. And then I think more people will say, what's stopping me from writing a new operating system for this old hardware and breathing back life into it? And then there'll be this discovery that's, oh, well, all the hardware is getting dated. It's kind of phased out. And fellas like you were just talking about are going to go, build a modern version of the Lisa hardware. And, I think it'll just be this kind of like feedback loop,
Yeah,
incestuous,
and people are going to
whatever.
be like, let's like the Lisa operating system version 7. What would it have been
Yeah.
like in 1999 or something
Yeah,
crazy like that?
or let's design let's make we have the Lisa 1, the Lisa 2, the
Oh,
Macintosh
Lisa
XL,
3.
whatever.
Yeah, that.
Yeah, I
Wow.
really think that'll happen, and it'll just be little hobbyists having fun. But I, I think it'll be interesting because more people, it's going to become more accessible. This hobby will be so much more accessible with just AI assisting on every side of it. That regardless of your opinion about AI, because I know a lot of people, not you, but everybody listening.
It's gonna be it's gonna be dogs and cats sleeping together. It's
Yeah,
gonna
but we should
What's that
all
line from Ghostbusters?
yeah, we should fully embrace it because it's going to put a big spotlight on our hobbies and make it accessible to a lot of people. And I think that's an important, cool thing.
Well, Nick, man, it's been great talking to you. We'll talk again then sometime soon.
I would love to. I got a lot to yap about.
Yeah, me too.
Awesome.
All
Well,
right, have a good one. Back to work.
thank you
I gotta
for
get back to
having
work.
me. I appreciate it. All
All
right.
right, I'll see you. Thanks for listening, and please check out some of my other interviews at classiccomputing.com.